Hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm really excited to share 5 DIY projects with you. If you're new to my channel, my name is Christina, and I'm going to walk you through all the details and the supplies that I use to create these projects. There's going to be lots to cover, so let's just dive right in. For the first project, I want to show you how easy it is to transform old chairs into something more new, modern, and updated. I've had these accent chairs for a while now, and I actually made the attempt to change the color of the fabric, which I like, but I think I could do something better. What I'm going to do first is just take them apart, and I bought some Boucle white cotton fabric from moodfabrics.com. Of course, every chair is going to be a little different. I was thankful that all I needed was an Allen key to go ahead and remove all of the wood frame of this chair. Once I've removed all of the screws and the bolts, I'm going to put them into a plastic bag, and I want to refinish all of the wood frame just by sanding them back to the natural wood that they are. I attempted to remove any of the original fabric, but there was actually glue involved as well. So I did take it off the backrest, but I did leave the seat covers, and I'm just going to go ahead and reupholster on top. Plus, I'm kind of going with a more rounded and thicker look, so I'm also going to add in some new polyfill as well. Again, every chair is going to have its own different scenarios as well as challenges. But this is a very minimalistic look, and I actually was quite inspired with some images that I found on Pinterest on how I wanted to create these chairs to have a different, somewhat of a Scandinavian kind of style. And this is where I thought going with the Boucle fabric was going to be perfect. What I really liked about the Boucle fabric is I didn't necessarily need to use piping in the furniture in order to create a nice professional look. I did like the shape and the design of these chairs, but I would like to make them a little bit more rounded as well as thicker into the cushion, making it more soft, inviting, almost like a pillow. So I'm going to use 2 sheets of this polyfill on both the seats as well as the backrest, again making it a lot more rounded and a lot more poofy. Just like the material, all you're going to need to do is cut the polyfill and material to the shape that you need. But always remember, you're going to need a little bit of extra for any folding and or for stapling. But I also found it very advantageous to make sure I didn't cut any too much extra, because that starts to get difficult to remove as well as staple. Using a very simple modern design piece like these chairs is perfect to start an upholstery project, especially when you have minimal experience like myself. One thing I did find super helpful is to make sure that my staples were a little bit longer than the original that came with my staple gun, because there are different lengths of staples. So if you can use one that's a little bit longer, especially when you're going to be adding a lot of material, or as well as the fiber fill, if your staples are a little too short, it will start to get a little bit frustrating and they're not going to grab and you end up wasting a lot. So just try to confirm what kind of staple size you have, and anybody at a hardware store or any place you buy the staples at will definitely be able to help you out with that. Now, because the Boucle fabric is very textured, it also will fray. I found it very helpful to just give it a little bit of a fold by about 1/2 inch and then make my staples. This chair design had nice rounded corners to it, so pulling the material nice and tautly was really easy. But if your chair is quite cornered and sharp with its edges, you can cut a little slit in your material, and this will help you pull that corner nice and taut without gathering and making a lot of creases. Now, I did form the material around the wood frame, and I want to just confirm that the frame of the wood can go back into its original slot, so if I needed to make any adjustments or cut the material back, I still could. When I got into the project, I thought the seat was going to be a little bit more difficult than the backrest, but I was quite wrong. It was the opposite. The actual backrest was a little trickier. I had to figure out a way that I could put the material, do what I needed to do, and make it seamless. I cut the material from front to back as much as I needed and made my folds to go ahead and staple it underneath the backrest. I had to figure out a way that I could pull this material nice and taut as well as make a seamless design on the side, and I wasn't sure how I was going to do this. First thing I did is the front part of my material I pulled and tucked into the back and stapled it to the wood frame. Then the back material I folded it and stapled the bottom, and for the sides all I decided to do was make a nice firm seam and decided to use some hot glue. Now you could go ahead and use obviously needle and thread if you prefer, but I found that if you use the hot glue at a fabric setting, you're good to go. And because you have those staples in the back, the integrity and the strength of the actual material to the chair is not compromised. So putting the extra fold with a little bit of the hot glue was a great way to improvise. This project actually only took a few hours in an afternoon to do both the chairs, so it was quick, it was easy, and I'm super delighted with the results. For project number 2, I had the leftover boucle from the chair cuts that I did, and I want to make a round throw pillow. Just using a string and a pencil, I'm going to go and make a nice even circle and cut my leftover material. And the trick of what I want to do with this is actually make it a button pillow. All I want to do is hand sew it because this is just a small little throw pillow or a little lumbar pillow for the chairs, just as a little match set to create with this boucle. I'm actually using embroidery thread to match the same color in that snow white. This type of thread is a little bit thicker and denser versus just regular sewing thread. Once I finished the hand sew, I left a little opening so I can go ahead and just put some polyfill into the pillow. And you're actually going to need quite a bit, but really depending on what you prefer. I like my pillows to be nice and firm, a little bit on the extra poofy, so I really kind of stuff it in there. But if you prefer it to be a little looser, it's totally your prerogative. There is absolutely no right and wrong. It's just a matter of preference when it comes to how filled you want your pillow. It's also really helpful when you make the cut after you've made that circle to leave probably about 1/2 inch. This way you have a little bit of room for your sewing. Now that the fiber fill is in there, I'm going to sew up a little patch here at the bottom on the outside, and then I'm going to go ahead and make that button. I always like to make at least 2 if not 3 knots at the end of each seam when I cut it off, so this just gives it a little extra strength. I will be using both sides of the thread for the button. I generally will actually just use one side, but for the button I want extra strength because I'm actually going through quite a bit of fabric as well as the polyfill. I made sure to go directly into the center and pinch the double thread in probably about 5 times just to make sure it was good and strong. Again, it's really helpful just to go ahead and make a couple of knots just so that way you have a little extra strength when you tie off your thread. I have some leftover pom-pom trim, so I'm actually just going to take the pom-pom itself and I'm going to place 1 on each side as well as thread that in so it has a perfect little button. If you didn't have anything like this on hand, it's no problem. You could just use a little piece of that boucle and make a little round button just with the material alone. This is a fabulous project so you don't waste material as well as it only took an hour. For my third project, I want to show you how easy it is to create a hanging shelf. I really wanted to use round jars, but I could only find square jars, and I'm going to be using some jute rope, a pine board that is 4 feet by 6 inches width. I had my husband make 1 foot shelves, so we'll have 4 boards at 1 foot. Now, because this shelving unit will be hanging from the ceiling, I actually wanted my husband to make cuts for the jars I bought by cutting an actual hole in each shelf. So just with a simple math, all we're going to do is cut out a small square to match the exact measurement of each jar. Once the inside cut was completed, we went ahead and sanded that. These shelves are going to be hung with the jute rope, so we're going to need some holes in the board in all 4 corners to match with the jute rope size. The jute rope size I used is 1/2 inch. I wanted to soften the wood tone, so I'm going to start with the Minwax gel stain in aged oak, and then I'm going to proceed to a color wash on top. I always recommend to wear gloves when working with gel stain, as it will stain your hands if you don't, and it's really difficult to get it off. It is super easy to use. All you're doing is wiping it on and wiping it off. It does help to go with the grain of the wood, so try to wipe it with the grain as well as wipe it off with the grain. It will dry fairly quickly. Using a water-based chalk paint in a cocoa color, I made a paint wash, always using 50-50. You can change that concentration if you want it to be a little bit more rich in the paint, or if you want it to be more transparent. Play with the ratio. Don't be scared to do that. It all just depends on what you like. I just would like to change the wood tone to a bit softer and using the materials I already have at home. So that's why I decided to go with this route, was to take the yellow out with the Minwax, soften it out a little bit more with the paint wash. But you're still able to leave that natural wood grain. For added highlights as well as dimension, I'm going to use white wax, and this too will also seal the wood to protect it because of what I'm going to be using it for. You can apply white wax or any wax with either a waxing brush or a lint-free cloth, including the removal of the wax to wipe back any excess. I'm going to go and make my first knot on the bottom shelf. Then I need to make a measurement cut on how much rope I'm going to need and 4 cuts of rope. What I need to measure is how far apart do I want those shelves, as well as enough room for the knot and enough to tie it at the top with my metal ring. So I made 4 cuts of rope at about 51 inches, and that gave me my shelf spaces of about 9 to 10 inches in between, so my jars would sit safely. I removed the lids as I'm going to be using these jars for my plants, and as you notice that the jar at the bottom is actually tapered, and that is why I wanted the cuts inside my shelves. This way, as a floating shelf, these jars aren't going to slide. For my fourth project, I'm recycling these bases from a previous project. I did lampshades turned to vases. I will leave the card in the description box if you want to check out that video. Because these were solid wood, I decided to hang on to them as I felt I could repurpose them, and that's exactly what I'm going to do with this project. Using pipe iron flange, we are going to actually make a pipe iron wine holder. So we're first going to just go and screw this flange into the base and make sure it's locked and secured. And using these pipe nipples, what a word, eh? These are what's going to hold all the parts together. All the parts to this project will be in the description box below. There's really just some physics involved. What we want to do is we want to create a ring to hold the wine bottles, but we obviously don't want them to collide together. So this is where it's the physics and a bit of math in order to pull this off. The nice part about these particular parts is each one is labeled on the cast iron what size you need. So for instance, for the pipe fitting T, then the 1/2 inch piping nipple. These all go in together, they're all labeled, which makes it a little bit on the easier side once you have all the parts together. You're definitely going to want to screw it nice and taut, so this way obviously it's not loose, but when you're tightening with the actual iron piping, it fits very, very snug, so it's actually really easy to pull it nice and tight. I will definitely have in the description box below all the parts in the order that you will need in order to build this particular project. It definitely took me a few minutes to put all the parts together, but it was super helpful, the fact that they're all labeled right on the actual pipe iron. So it's really not that difficult. It's what I can tell you though, when I put this together, is you must put your T pipe from the bottom to the top. You can't start, once you have the base and the foundation all ready to go, if you go ahead and start from the top and work your way down, the physics of it won't work. So I found in order to place the exact pipe piece in the angle I needed, it was super helpful just to start from the bottom. It was also super helpful to have wine bottles, so this way you can actually practice those angles based on the neck and the body. And this way you can also test to make sure that it's well balanced. Once you actually have all of the actual pieces, which again are in the description box, it's really just like putting Lego together. But to save you a step, when I originally had started to make this, I did start from the side, and my physics was always off. So the best advice I can give you when you have the parts is start from the bottom, work your way to the top. And again, use those wine bottles so this way you can just retest before you go and build up more. And when you have those angles, your project will be done in no time. They also have the same parts in the PVC piping, which is kind of a plastic. What you could do is even buy the exact same parts for the same sizes in the PVC plastic, spray paint it black, and you're going to have the exact same look. I've enjoyed over the years using iron pipe, home decor. I've made towel racks, I have made toilet paper holders, I've made lamps. So if you'd like to see more of some creative iron pipe ideas, let me know in the description box below. I really wanted to introduce this type of material to make decor with one of my favorite projects. For the 5th project, I thought it would be fun just to do a thrifted item such as this vase. I paid $1 at my thrift store a while back, and I really wanted to try some seagrass. I actually have lots of really fun ideas I would like to share with the seagrass, but this is a good way to start by just taking a random item. It could be a bottle, a plastic bottle, an old vase, adding some seagrass with some hot glue, and you can create an entirely new look. I wanted to cover the little metal around bulbs at the bottom, so that's actually where I started the foundation of this project. But just so it had some structure, I actually had to glue all of the seagrass together all the way around, so it was a little bit more firm. All I did was just keep wrapping. Every so often I would just stop and add a little bit of glue just for some adhesion. I was pleasantly surprised how easy seagrass was to work with. It's a little bit softer than rope, as well as its structure, so you can really quite manipulate the seagrass to the exact form that you want. I will have the exact link of the seagrass material that I'm using in my description box below, as it's a really fun product to use. This is perfect if you ever wanted to change the look and style of mirrors or even picture frames. I really would like to plan in the future for a tutorial on how to weave with the seagrass, so this way you can create baskets as well, as it's super easy to do. And then just to create something a little bit different, I cut a 1-inch dowel, added some hot glue, and created its own legs for this vase. This just added a little bit more of a different design, as well as a little bit more height to the overall project, and I was really happy with the results. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and please let me know in the comments below which one your favorite project was. I upload a video every single Saturday, so if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. I'm really looking forward to seeing you soon, and until then, take care.